It is Friday, January 22nd. Let's talk PlayStation. Hello everyone, as always we'll start with our PlayStation Plus reminder. The January games are available right now. That's Shadow the Tomb Raider, Greedfall, and the PS5 version of Maneater. So if you haven't yet, make sure you add these games to your library. We are nearing the end of January, so you do still have some time left, but not a whole lot, so just make sure you go ahead and do that. I want to start off real quick with an update from last week's news story. In fact, it was our title and thumbnail news story, or at least one of them, which was Sony's 2021 CES digital showcase, which wasn't very long, and there was a small portion for Sony Interactive Entertainment, but in there, the one thing that we did learn towards the end of that small trailer with a lot of gameplay was a bunch of release date windows for some upcoming PS5 games. And that was somewhat noteworthy because a lot of these titles we had no idea when they were planned to come out. Granted, they weren't exact release dates, but again, they were release windows, right? Certain months. Well, right after last week's episode, about a few hours after I uploaded that video, Sony altered that trailer and they removed all the release windows, or at least the ones that were new to us, right? So I think they still left in the ones for Horizon. I think Ratchet & Clank's in there, Returnal, but we've got a complete release date for Returnal. But they got rid of all the interesting ones, and we theorized last week that we shouldn't put much stock into those anyway. Somebody obviously did make a mistake, and those probably are legitimate release windows, but don't put those out there because, as we saw from 2020, and even though this year is looking, brighter, it's still, we're probably going to see a lot of delays. None of those release windows are final, and can almost guarantee that a lot of those are going to miss their targeted release window, especially for some of those games that are so far out like Pragmata and Project Athia. So for right now, at least, it looks like somebody made a mistake, and Sony's trying to keep that under wraps. Anyway, moving on though, just yesterday was the Resident Evil Online Showcase, which we got some new gameplay for RE Village, alongside a release date, May 7th, which that actually falls on my birthday, and I'm not entirely sure if that's how I'll spend my birthday because I'm a huge baby playing horror games. But that is coming up very soon, which is good. We also saw the announcement of RE-verse, or Reverse, which is basically a smaller multiplayer component of the game that'll be bundled with RE Village. They're making it sound as though they'll separate them later, so for right now, at least if you buy the game at launch, you'll get that as well, which interestingly, that's only going to be available on PS4, even if you buy, say, the PS5 version, which it's also confirmed that RE Village will be on PS4. It does have current-gen versions as well, so if you remember when RE Village was announced, Capcom wasn't committing to a current-gen version just yet, but now it is confirmed. It'll be available on PS4, which I know that still irritates some people with cross-gen games. It always depends on the nature of that game and if it really will be held back, but more so, a lot of people are still on PS4 right now, and the good news here is that if you buy on PS4, you do get a free next-gen upgrade, so it's always good to see, a big publisher offering this for their games, so that'll be available for RE Village. And also noteworthy here, because there is a PS4 version, we were kind of hoping that maybe we would see another VR mode, because we know this game is a first-person perspective like RE7, and it's super underappreciated. It's a great way to play the game. Unfortunately, no news like that here, although we did see a stealth drop of a small 10-15 minute demo called The Maiden, so that's available right now on PS5, exclusively for PS5, so one of those few circumstances where if you're on PS5 right now, that is one experience that you can have only on this console for right now at least. They will release the demo everywhere else, but you can watch a walkthrough on YouTube or something. It's very short, which I actually did play it, and the audio, I wore headphones, which was a bad idea, but yeah, I struggled to get through that stuff, but yeah, everybody's digging the giant vampire lady. I can certainly see that point of view. Yeah, it's looking like a great game, so May 7th, not too bad. Next up, if you remember last week, we were talking about Destruction All-Stars and that we should get news for this game very soon, and technically that did happen, but we just got a new trailer that is in the same veins of the other trailers. Too many cuts going on, you can't really see what's happening. This one focuses on the characters, or the All-Stars, and that's fine, but the PlayStation blog write-up already told us about the characters a little bit. Again, it's about that uninterrupted gameplay footage. That's what we want to see. I want to see a full match play out. It gives you a much better feel for how the game actually will probably play out, right? And the thing is, I'm starting to think that maybe the game won't look good as a full match, right? It's something that they would prefer you to just play organically and kind of jumping in, not knowing much about it. I think if you watch a full match, maybe that's the worry here. I'm not entirely sure, but like how we saw in the RE Village showcase yesterday, it's nice to always have some gameplay that just doesn't cut away from anything, right? You can just see naturally how the game plays, and when you have footage like that, it kind of shows a certain level of confidence in the product. And for Destruction All-Stars, obviously it seems like it's been in a tight position for a while. Now, moving on to our next news story. This, unfortunately, is also a little bit old because it came out right after last week's episode, but we'll briefly go over this one because it's sales data, and that's always interesting to talk about. So, the MPD Group recently revealed the top 10 best-selling PlayStation software in 2020, ranked in dollar sales, and this chart is just another good example of how important exclusives can be to your platform. So, in the top 10, Sony has 4 IP in there, with The Last of Us Part 2 at number 3, Ghost of Tsushima at number 4, you got Final Fantasy VII Remake at number 6. That's a timed exclusive. Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales number 7. And then MLB The Show 20 just barely got in there, but that's also a very important franchise. Moves a lot of units every single year, and that's why Sony was totally okay with letting that franchise go multi-platform when they re-signed with the Major League Baseball Association. But, we've had this conversation a few times now. Exclusives do matter. Whether it's hardware, where PlayStation's more traditional, or it's services, where Microsoft's going with Game Pass, it really doesn't matter. Software is king. That's what's going to, trend people into a certain direction when it comes to the marketplace. They're going to go for software first, platform second. Brand loyalty, is a thing, but for the most part, people will buy good software no matter where it is. And that's why Nintendo, for example, I think their top 10 was completely dominated by their IP. It's all their games because people love them, and that's just, how it goes. So, it's business as usual, I guess. But anyway, getting into our next news story, Guerrilla Games recently confirmed that with their last patch they sent out for the PC version of Horizon Zero Dawn 1.10, I believe, where they're still fixing that game up. They've been fixing that game. When it launched on PC, it was in kind of a rough state, depending on the rig that you were trying to play it on. But they've been pretty diligent in putting out a lot of patches. Anyway, the recent patch 1.10, they confirmed in a blog write-up that that's basically going to be their last patch for a while as they shift development to, or shift their focus over to Horizon Forbidden West. So nothing particularly noteworthy here other than this game is still slated for late 2021 this year. So when we look at that timeline of how the year is shaping up, I suspect that we might hear more about this game or get more details and possibly that second trailer once we get closer to, we might see something in spring, but I think obviously at a certain point we are definitely expecting some big news in the summer, where usually that's where E3 is. Now that's not going to happen, but we assume that most publishers and the manufacturers are going to be doing, online live streams and events, things like that, and that's probably where we'll see more Horizon Forbidden West. Next up, we just got a director for The Last of Us HBO TV series for at least the pilot episode, which will be Kadimir Balagov. He recently directed Closeness and Beanpole, both of which won numerous awards, so this might work out okay. Granted, he's only directing the pilot episode, and I would imagine that's very much the nature of the pilot episode, where depending on how that goes, he might direct the rest of the series, but this seems like encouraging news for this show. And that evens out nicely with our next news story, which is about the Uncharted movie, because that got delayed to February 2022. So, not a huge delay, and in all fairness to the movie, because we always have negative news stories surrounding the development of this film. This wasn't an isolated scenario. Sony had to delay a lot of their movies. They just pushed a lot of them back by a few months, and Uncharted was one of them. This movie, to be fair, the principal photography is wrapped already. They've been teasing images and, stills from the movie, so I think it's still coming out. There's no worry here, but we'll just have to wait a little bit longer to actually see how it turns out. Still want to see a trailer. That's going to really set the tone for what to expect here, but for now at least, 2022, so we'll be waiting for quite a while. Now, in keeping with our Naughty Dog news stories, good segue here, but the studio recently posted a number of job listings, and normally this isn't newsworthy unless the job listings are somewhat revealing, which we'll actually talk about in a second here for a later story, but for right now, this isn't really all that big of a deal. Neil Druckmann did retweet this and say, come work with us, we're working on something very cool. That's where a lot of people start to speculate, especially after, part 2, where it was very divisive. So, will they do a sequel? Are they still doing factions? When's that coming out? Is it a new IP? And this kind of coincided perfectly with the recent revelation from a Naughty Dog artist, ArtStation portfolio, where about 2 months ago, so people didn't really notice this until just this week, where they were working on some concept art for what looked like a fantasy-style game. And the original description that they put alongside this art was very ambiguous. It made it almost seem like they were working on some sort of new game that was fantasy-driven. Not the case. This artist did clarify that it was just because 2 months ago, when Valhalla came out, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, they were inspired to make this art. And that was my initial gut reaction was, well, let's chill for a second, because it's 2 months old, nobody noticed this. And I thought, okay, maybe this was inspired from Valhalla. I mean, that's what artists do. I mean, they kind of get inspired from all things they see around them, and they'll sometimes work on projects on the side, and that's what happened here. So for right now, at least, nothing is really steering us in one direction for Naughty Dog. Moving on to our next news story, Sony's secret San Diego team, the one that we still don't have any sort of formal announcement about their existence. This is probably one of our larger updates here surrounding this team. Over on LinkedIn, Michael Mumbauer, he was the former studio head and senior director for the Visual Arts Group, which, remember, when we talk about this team, if there's job listings or what have you, it's always under the Visual Arts Group, which is a real thing, but that's what they're using right now. They haven't, again, announced this team formally. Anyway, in his About section, it says, his latest achievement is having built a brand new all-star AAA action-adventure development team for PlayStation. Based in San Diego and utilizing proprietary engine technology, this team was assembled to expand upon existing franchises and craft all new stories for the next generation of gamers. So there's that, and then if you scroll further down on his LinkedIn profile, there's the featured video section where he actually purposely put in a speculative video from Robin Gaming back in 2018. That very video has a thumbnail for Nathan Drake. It says, are they making Uncharted 5? So why did he purposely put that there? And the wording in the About section means, oh, okay, existing franchises, that's the purpose of the studio. So yes, they're definitely working on Uncharted 5, right? Or some sort of Uncharted spinoff. Well, right now, the one thing that we did also have this past week, and actually a little over a month ago over on Recent Era, Shinobi602, verified user, he's had a very good track record. Conversations there, of course, thinking that, yeah, maybe it is another Uncharted. This is where he posted a GIF saying, are you sure? That was back in December. And then very recently, this past week, he said, I wouldn't read too much into that. It's out of date. That was in direct reference to this particular LinkedIn profile. So that is something that we absolutely have to keep in mind. Not everything we see will be completely up to date, and the nature of game development in general is always changing behind the scenes. They could create 3, 4, 5 different vertical slices that don't work out. They could be evaluating tons of projects that they don't move forward with, and that could be over, a 6 month to a year to 2 year period. It happens. And so right now we just have no strong indication of how far along this project is and when we'll get a formal announcement of their project or just the studio in general. Because that is another worry. We had the story about a month ago or something like that, and now very recently with this revelation of like, oh, well, if it's out of date, maybe the studio really is gone. Not the case. There was a job listing like a week ago for a senior game designer working with VASG, new studio. I mean, they're definitely still there. They're toiling away on that project. We just, we have to be patient on this one. But if we do look back at that original last line there, where even if it is out of date, it did say the team was assembled to expand on existing franchises and craft all new stories for the next generation of gamers. This team was very much built, at least initially, to evaluate existing IP that Sony owns, to have this team take care of that while there are other developers that created these IP, they can go on to do new properties, which I always think that's one of the best approaches that you can do. Field it out to another team or build a new team organically, which is something that Sony's always for. They can handle those existing franchises, and then some of your all-star lineup of worldwide studios, they can go on to experiment with different projects. And hey, that's another good segue to our next news story. Sony Santa Monica was very direct with their job listing for a new art director, where they just straight up announced a new unannounced title, because we already know that they're working on the next God of War, tentatively scheduled for release sometime this year. But over on Twitter, they did say, hot job, art director. We are seeking an experienced art director for the development of a new unannounced title. And this is very much a new project. Ralph Grassetti, the current art director at Sony Santa Monica. No, I'm not going anywhere. This year is going to be amazing, and I'm very much looking forward to the future. You've also got Santa Monica's Jeet Schroff. We are expanding our team at Sony Santa Monica. Come join our band of storytellers to help set the art vision on an amazing new unannounced project. So, and mind you, Sony Santa Monica has been home to a bunch of smaller teams where they sort of, incubate these teams and collaborate with them directly for some of these smaller scale titles. So if you look at, their portfolio, they've worked on other smaller games, but largely they're focused on big AAA budget projects, and we already know about, some that were worked on behind the scenes and then canceled, and those were big, multi-million-dollar projects that didn't pan out, which was going to be a new IP. But if we're talking about today, then we're looking at the same situation, a new property out of Sony Santa Monica. That's really exciting. even though we've kind of been given hints left and right that that's what was going to happen, is that they would initially take on another project and it would be a new IP, and there's murmurings that that's Cory Barlog's game actually, but either way, it's nice that they were direct about it. They do have a new project that they're working on, and that's also great considering that we had a conversation about this in the predictions video about how if you look at Sony's worldwide studios, you can largely predict the release date timeline based off of when their last shipped project was, if you account for a 3-4 year development cycle, and that's assuming that there's no major problems or hiccups in development, which could potentially happen, of course, but you can look at their release timeline and account for that stuff and get an idea of when games are going to ship or when they're going to be ready, and that's how we were thinking 2022 might be a little bit of a dry year based off of what we're looking at right now, but these are the pleasant surprises that we want to see. We want to see that organic growth, and for Sony Santa Monica, it's not like they have a slow output, but it's not a particularly fast one either. So to see them, grow their studio to the point where they can take on that second project, possibly fill in a gap year here or there for those big budget Sony IP that everybody gets so jazzed up about, that's great, and I would love to see that for their other teams as well. Moving on to our next news story, the PS5 scalping nightmare continues. This past week, we actually had a fair amount of availability drops in the US and in the UK, but the UK was hit pretty hard in particular. One of their leading video game retailers, Game, was hit by a scalper group where they claimed over 2,000 consoles allegedly, and they even were bragging about this, saying that it's only getting easier, which understandably upset a lot of people, and those people were asking for some accountability from Game, which Game then responded, we'll look into all these transactions and scrutinize them, make sure that it's one console per transaction, so they're obviously probably going to try and sort that out, but this is just reigniting the conversation again from members of British Parliament to try and see if they can put some sort of legislation in place to, make this illegal to use bots to purchase all these products en masse. And remember, it's not even just so much PS5. I mean, that's certainly what started the conversation, but even when this was closer towards launch, these groups are still notorious for not only snatching up consoles, but sneakers, which they always do, but even in-demand COVID items like hot tubs. Hot tubs are like a year-long wait. They're on back order, but when they go up, apparently, these groups are snatching them up just like that. And it's as we've said before, I mean, you do have to put something in place that makes it illegal or penalizes them. If there's any sort of loophole or free market, sort of angle in society, people will use it for their financial gain. It's just the nature of the beast, right? So it's super annoying, but I don't even know why they're still doing it with PS5s. I mean, the profit margin's just not there. The prices are coming down. There's a bunch of labor involved in shipping the machines or meeting up with people in real life. There's potential danger there. You've got fees online, fees when you ship. I mean, come on. If you've got some sort of capital here, this is not how you spend your money. It's just, as I've said before, it's excuses, it's ridiculous, it's stupid. I mean, this is just a complete waste of time and energy. It's not really what I would do with my money, but hopefully something will be done fairly soon to combat this, and at least again with PlayStation 5 in particular, once the console is in more mass availability, this won't be a huge issue, but gosh, it's still such a pain with these people, I swear. Anyway, moving on to our next story, CustomizeMyPlates.com. They were originally PlateStation5.com. This was one of the first companies to show up offering custom PS5 faceplates, and then they were shut down directly from Sony. D-Brand also showed up, and they were being very straightforward, saying, come sue us, we're going to release this thing, and we weren't really sure what they were doing there. But Customize My Plates is back with their own black PlayStation 5 faceplate, and apparently they're also very confident as well. So they're selling it right now. It's just a black faceplate, but they do say, they respond saying, won't you get sued? They say the patent is pending and all sales finalized before it's approved are untouchable. We didn't know before, now we do. Further, we have not replicated anyone's proprietary design. Our shells improve upon the original by allowing for more ventilation. We will be able to sell even after the patent is approved. So it looks like they are also 100% going forward with this. And to be honest, outside of these specialized companies like Customize My Plates or D-Brand, which is a much more established company, I just ran into this on eBay this past week. The floodgates are open, people, so that's kind of what we were expecting. I mean, once China gets involved, and I mean, they were already involved to begin with because they were more than likely going to be the place where these shells were getting manufactured from many other, US-based companies, or I think D-Brand's in Toronto, actually, but besides the point, the floodgates are open, so I think these things are already getting made en masse, and yeah, I mean, Sony can't control it. Custom PS5 faceplates are here, and now you'll start seeing a range of options more than likely. And yeah, the pricing is, kind of like, absurd, $60 to $70. I think their original price for customized my plates was $35 or $45, I don't know, but we're probably going to see some very cool things come to market, and we'll probably toy around with a few of them. Now, with all that said, it's time to get to Let's Talk Plus, the weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway where one of you can win a $10 PSN code. I would like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or Twitter. If you would like to win a $10 PSN code, it's very easy. Follow the link down below. Supporting this channel, a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week because I'm trying to pay for your games. Those are all the news stories that I want to talk about with you all. Our Tuesday video was a PS5 review. That's right, an actual final assessment of the console. That's the one thing that we were sorely missing amongst all the topics that we've done so far about PS5. So there's my actual review. Took a while to put together, that's why we missed last week's Tuesday upload, but go check it out, and thank you so much for all the kind words and support surrounding that upload. I really appreciate it. This coming Tuesday we have another special upload, which I'm hoping will be ready on time. If not, follow on Twitter. I'll always give updates there on what's going on with uploads, but that's pretty much it. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Boetk. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.